What's going on, everybody? My name is Derek, and welcome to my channel. So today's video is going to be very much a vlog video. For all of you that also follow my mother, you know that this move to Mississippi has been a strong topic of discussion, we'll just say. I wanted to fill you all in because the move happened. It is almost complete, and I'll get to that. But and you've probably by now seen some pictures on my Facebook group or TikTok that we shared. Mom made some videos about the house, showing progress on the cleaning. So we've been a little cryptic in a way, kind of putting it out there that the move was happening, but my mom is allowing me to kind of talk first about it because she's really busy right now with my grandmother. So quick context, if anyone's watching this for the first time, my mother is my whole family's from Maine, and I live in Hernando, Mississippi now. I've been in the South for 16 years, just south of Memphis now in Hernando, and my mother decided to move down here to be closer to me and take my grandmother, her mother. Now, my grandmother's 98 years old and needs care. So originally, my mom had plans to have my grandmother professionally escorted down here and with like an ambulance truck. And then I was going to fly up to Maine, and my mom was going to put some furniture in a truck, have that shipped, and then her and I were going to drive her car down here, which is a good 24-hour drive. We would have split it up, of course. So that was the first original plan. So then what ended up happening was my grandmother, who at the time was in a nursing home, had to go to the hospital for an infection. And that's when they discovered that she was not doing so well, and said that she needed hospice. They found enough evidence to say that, we need to switch this to palliative care, which a term I just learned. In other words, saying we need to make sure the rest of her days are comfortable. So we decided to start hospice care and move her back into her house. She was in a nursing home for about 6 months. So this happened 7 days, maybe 10 days before everyone was supposed to leave. All the flights were booked. The moving truck was booked. The moving of my grandmother everything was booked. But now she's not doing well, so we canceled everything. Well then, so she's still around. She's hanging in there. So my mom was finally like, all right, well, it's time to think about this again. She's like, I'm over this. I still got to get going. So we ramped up a new plan, and still to move her down and my grandmother down, which is terrifying because my grandmother's 98 years old and she can't walk, she can't stand, right? So, but this time we decide that my mom's going to ship the car, ship furniture, and me and my daughter are going to fly up and flying back down. And that's exactly what we did. We just did it this weekend, and I'll give you kind of the rundown of how that all went down. So Saturday, if you're watching this on post day, it was today's November 2nd, so on October 30th, on Saturday, me and my daughter flew up. We got there around noon, and then just helped my mom clean, move stuff around. At this point, my grandmother was in respite, where there's a hospice center that they took her in for 5 days to give us the space to be able to do what we needed to do and not have to take care of her the facility had her under control. They were taking care of her, which gave us the freedom to just work. So that's what we did all Saturday, is clean up, move things around. We made a TikTok video that night. If you saw the TikTok video where we were spinning around, we did that night, towards the end of the night. And then Sunday was more cleaning, more moving, stationing stuff, because my mom's selling the house. The furniture she didn't want to take stayed at the house, and then we kind of put everything in its place to make it look livable. You know how it is. There's a couch here, and put a table over there, and we're not taking this chair, so let's put the chair over here so it looks like good in the corner. Just helps, I guess, the potential buyers kind of get a vision of what the house might look like if they have furniture. Plus, the stuff we're going to take anyway. And whoever buys the house, if they want that stuff, then that's part of the house. But a lot of good cleaning too, and really got the house straightened up. And then we left the house at 2:15. And then that's when I know, the reason why I know 2:15 exact, because the whole day had to be organized like an itinerary in order to get everything we needed done. Because so the next thing was we leave the house, which was an emotional situation, by the way. But we got through it. We're heading off from Sanford, Maine, up to Scarborough, Maine, which is where my grandmother was being held at her hospice facility. Okay, so now this is where the journey begins, because we are now entering the stage where we are transporting a 98-year-old woman who can't stand across the country over 2 flights with a layover and everything. So we get there, and we go through all the paperwork, and my mom's doing her thing. Now it's time to take my grandmother from the facility and start this journey. So the professionals pick her up out of the bed and put her in a wheelchair. Then we wheel the chair to the car, and then now it's getting my grandmother in the car. And we did that 14 more times, moving my grandmother from one seat to the next. And I learned a lot Sunday night. I learned that I can pick my grandmother up, that's for sure. But to give you some kind of idea of what it was like to do this when it came to my grandmother, it's the moving. It's all about like the literal movement of her, because wheelchair is amazing, but we got to get her from car to wheelchair to plane, the whole thing. So this is how we did it. So we get her in the car from the respite, and now off to the airport. So of course the airport has a wheelchair, and they're really nice. They come out and they bring us the wheelchair, and but we got to get her on that wheelchair, don't we? So now it's just me and my mom and my daughter, and it's hard to do it with more than one people trying to get her out of the car. It's a little difficult. So I got distracted here. 1 second. Sorry about that. So here I am now, having to kind of, muscle up a little bit and get her out of the car, and then put her in her wheelchair. It's like, all right, okay, got through that. Then we got to bring everything in. We each have like 2 things to check. We're moving a bunch of stuff too, so we have a lot of luggage with us. So we do that. My mom returns the rental car. Now we're checking in. That goes fine, but then we got to go through security, and that was a whole situation there. They're all very, very nice. Everyone, let me just say this, from security to pilots to flight attendants, awesome. We had 100% awesome experiences with all the people that helped us. But security took a long time, because they still have to take my grandmother's shoes off, and they still have to scan. They still have to do all the normal stuff, but she can't stand up. She can't walk. So, and they can't wheel her through an x-ray machine. So but we got through that. Okay, great. Still easier than having to move her from a chair to another chair. So that wasn't that big a deal. So then we make to our gate, and now we're waiting for our first flight. And now I'm nervous. Like, how are we going to get her into a, how are we going to do this? The whole thing was like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? None of us have done this before. I certainly haven't. So it was terrifying. I'm not going to lie. It was nerve wracking, and I just didn't know how this was going to work. We're going to get up in the air, and Meme is going to have issues. Who knows, but so what they do is you get to go first. That was a plus, like literally, like we were the first ones brought to the plane, because they do that. They do the pre-boarding for anyone that needs assistance if they're in a wheelchair. But if often the case, people that are in a wheelchair can still kind of walk. They can kind of move themselves and they sit themselves. But anyone that literally can't walk, they call it a lift. If someone needs to be lifted into a seat on the plane, you go very, very first out of privacy. They want to respect the person, and they don't want a plane full of people watching this. So you get to go on first. And then you go down the tunnel, and then you get to the end of the tunnel just before getting onto the plane. And then what they do now is we moved her from a wheelchair to what's called an aisle chair, which is a narrower chair that is able to fit down the aisle in the airplane. So now here we are again, having to pick her up. This time, some of these moments I had help. There was one time a pilot helped me move my grandmother. We each went under one of her armpits, and we kind of lifted her that way. Towards the end, I ended up doing it all myself, but nonetheless. So you move her to this narrower chair, and it's so narrow that you got to strap them in so they don't fall off the sides. And then that allows them to back the person into the plane. So then you find the seat you want to put her in, and it has to be at least the second row. First row have different arms that don't move up. So the second row on, the arms move up. So that way we can line the chair up to the airplane seat, move the arms up, and literally just have to kind of just shift her over from this aisle, wheelchair seat to the actual seat. But still difficult. It's tight areas. But eventually I got to a point where I would just pick my grandmother up, give her a big bear hug under her armpits, and just move her legs in, get her good, get her situated, pillows galore. I mean, she was padded up pretty good. So first flight, get her in her chair and or her actual seat, and off we go. Flight goes well. Luckily, the second flight got delayed because that was not delayed by much, but it gave us enough time in between flights, because boarding is nice because you get to be on first, but now you get off the plane last. So that's the other side of it. So you're in the plane a lot for a long time, but we have to wait till everyone empties out, and then it's us, because now we got to bring in that aisle chair again. And I move her from her actual seat to this new small wheelchair. We strap her in. We literally just roll her outside of the plane into the tunnel. Then we got to move her again from that to the wheelchair, off and running. Meanwhile, we got a bunch of carry-on stuff. It's just, so luckily that's where Skylar came in big time. She would gather the stuff for us and make sure we still have everything with us. And what I ended up doing was, anytime we would change my grandmother from a wheelchair to an aisle chair, or an aisle chair to the back to the wheelchair, I would just bear hug her and just lift her straight up, and then someone behind her would switch the chairs, and I'd just put her down. That became the easiest way to do it. And then so same thing. We had a layover in Chicago, so we had to do that all over again. And it's late. Our first flight didn't leave till 7:00, so it's getting late. And I'm tired. I can't imagine what a 98-year-old feels. But to her credit, she hung in there. She did really good. So now we're in the second flight from Chicago to Memphis. And the two things ahead of us that was concerning to me was if we could fit everything in my car, because the car we used to get to the original airport in Portland, Maine, had more space, and we were bringing a lot of luggage. My car is a lot smaller, so I was worried about that. And then another nice little nugget to all this is my grandmother had a wheelchair at her house for years. We couldn't take it. We just didn't have room for it. So I knew that once we landed in Memphis and then we eventually packed the car, which we were able to fit everything in the car. And my mom and daughter sat in the back and they had like bags on them. We just stacked my little Toyota Corolla hatchback. We stacked it up to the max. My grandmother sitting to the right of me in the front. So, okay, that's great. But now as we're heading home, the the thing that was always just kind of there that we didn't know how we were going to handle is the fact that we don't have a wheelchair. We've been using airport wheelchairs all day, all night, which is great. But we don't have a wheelchair. What are we going to do? Once we leave the airport, we don't have a wheelchair anymore. How are we going to get her into my apartment? So a friend of mine texted me and gave me this great idea that we used, and I wheeled my grandmother into my apartment in my office chair, the chair I'm sitting in right now, this chair. That wheeled my grandmother into my apartment. So that was interesting, and this is happening at like 2 a.m. I counted it was 14 times that my grandmother had to be hoisted and going from whatever to the next thing, whatever it was. She was hoisted 14 times. And we were traveling for about 12 hours, from when we first left the Hospice Respite Care Center to when we finally got into my apartment. So long night. And again, it was exhausting for me. Granted, I was lifting my grandmother all night, but just flying alone can be rough. And my grandmother, she handled it. So Sunday night, we roll in. Obviously, we have no hospice equipment. Hospice has not been here yet. Why would they? So my grandmother sleeps in my daughter's bed in her bedroom. My daughter's bed actually lifts up the head, perches up. So that was perfect. We lined the bed. We made it all as comfortable as we could make it. And that's where my grandmother slept for the night. And then yesterday, the hospice showed up. The first lady showed up for intake just to kind of interview my mom and grandmother and see what's going on. And yes, they communicated with the other hospice and just doing an intake sort of orientation, enrollment, whatever, to see what they need. That whole thing. And then that lasted about an hour or so, maybe 90 minutes. And then equipment came later yesterday afternoon, early evening. We got a bed, oxygen machine, all the different things that we need, set up in my living room. And then that was another. So yesterday there was one transfer for my grandmother. I had to hoist her from my daughter's bed into this office chair. Again, we used this office chair again yesterday to her new bed, and then I had to hoist her into her bed. But now she's in a real medical bed that goes really low, so you can sit on there comfortably, lay her down, then hoist it up, perch it to whatever angle she wants. She's got one of those tables that kind of rolls over her bed. I mean, my living room is like a hospital room right now, totally consumed. Had to move some furniture to make that happen, but and that's where we are at right now. My mom's car just arrived today, so that's cool. She has her own ride now. The furniture for her new apartment, I'm not totally clear on when that stuff's going to come, and that's what we're waiting on. We're settled, but only until furniture starts rolling in. And then that's the next phase, to then move everyone over there. And then that will be the final settling. And then my apartment will go back to normal. That could be a week or two. We don't really know. My mom can explain more about the moving company, but so that's where we're at right now. So everyone's here. We're all safe. We made it. Exhausted, but we got things rolling. Just today, the hospice finally started getting going. We have an aide that's going to be coming in Monday through Friday, and then a nurse coming in 2 times a week. They were both here today, getting things all kind of situated and acclimated to what my grandmother needs. And just take it day to day now at this point. So it was, I can't explain what the weekend was like, because it was a mix of very intense emotions. You know, it's one thing to move from the house you grew up in. I'm speaking for my mom. Me too. But I've been gone 16 years, and you know, I lived in that house until I was 11, and then my mom and I had different apartments, you know, and so forth. But for my mom, the house is, I mean, it's ingrained in her. She's been there for her pretty much her entire life. So there's that. And then there's moving your mom, who's 98 years old. Speaking for my mom, or me, moving my grandmother, who's 98 years old, in hospice care. You know, it's like, oh my God. So there's that stress level and the unknowns behind that, you know. So it was a very heavy weekend, but we got through it. And I know a lot of you have been concerned. My mom's recent videos have been concerning. I know you have been concerned, but you've reached out and tried, you know, you've commented to me about my mom and trying to communicate to her through me. And 99% of you know that my mom doesn't like comments. So to the few of you that messaged me, direct messaged me, threw in a comment in a video, what have you, and concern for my mom, I appreciate it. Thank you for that, but also understand that I kind of left those to myself, because that's, as again, 99% of you know my mom's relationship with comments, and I wanted to just give her her space and not overwhelm her with comments from y'all. But thank you, though. I read them. I understand your concern. I appreciate it. But don't, you know, I apologize if I didn't send a message to my mom, because that's not something that she probably would have wanted to see, no matter how nice it was. Y'all get it. So, and that's it. So today, I'm sure my mom, when she gets fired back up with her camera and getting online, I mean, she's completely discombobulated right now. All it is trying to get my grandmother settled with hospice. My mom's living out of a suitcase, and like I said, her furniture's not even here yet. So I know she'll be recording soon and filling you all in, but she gave me permission to do the first video, catching y'all up. Look, I'm sure you're going to hear about this more, but we'll see how this all works out. I hope to start being busier online here on YouTube, taking a week off or so for all this stuff. I just haven't had time to record. I hope to ramp things back up and give you all some cool content here in the next week. And until then, look, thank you all so much again for the comments and you guys engaging with me on my channel. I do appreciate it. And some of the stuff you guys tell me is pretty heartwarming. So I can't thank you enough for that. Till next time, y'all, I hope you all have a great day, and I will talk to you again soon.